Hello and welcome. I'm Old Joe. I'm taking a break from watching episodes of the 1970s series Search to revisit a made for TV movie that has stuck with me ever since I first saw it on October 8th, 1974. In 1974, Tuesday nights presented a difficult choice as far as television viewing. My dad and I preferred to watch the police drama Adam 12 on NBC, but my mom and my sister liked the sitcom Happy Days on ABC. I would have already circled my choice in the TV guide for which movie to watch that night. I remember watching ABC movies quite a bit more often than NBC, but October 8th's movie on ABC was called Hit Lady. It was a story about an artist who moonlights as a hired killer. It starred Yvette Mimieux and Joseph Campanella. Now, Hit Lady must not have sounded very interesting to me as a 15-year-old, and in fact, it doesn't sound very interesting today either. So that Tuesday night at 8:30, I was tuned to WIIC-TV, Pittsburgh's NBC affiliate, and we watched the world premiere of a made-for-television motion picture, Where Have All the People Gone? Now beware, spoilers do lie ahead. If you haven't seen it, I suggest watching the movie. The movie opens with a view of the sun filtering through tree branches, and some ominous music plays behind a bit of narration.
It was a Sunday in August. Mom, Dad, David, and I were on vacation digging for fossils in the high Sierras. Mom had to go back to L.A. that morning.
The camera pivots to introduce us to our star, Peter Graves. He's in a rocky clearing amongst some pine trees.
Born Peter Ornish on March 18, 1926, the man who would later become Peter Graves was into sports and music. He was hired as a radio announcer at WMIN in his hometown of Minneapolis when he was 16 years old. He spent 2 years in the Army Air Force during World War II. After the war he studied drama at the University of Minnesota. He married his college sweetheart and the two remained together until his death. He followed his older brother James Arness of Gunsmoke fame to Hollywood. With more than 100 acting credits to his name, Peter Graves had a very recognizable voice and was well known for his voice-over work. One of his most notable appearances was as Sergeant Price in the 1953 film Stalag 17. He is probably best known for his portrayal of Mr. James Phelps in more than 140 episodes of Mission Impossible. Many will recognize him as Captain Clarence Over from the over-the-top comedies Airplane and Airplane 2, the sequel. Peter Graves died on March 14, 2010, just 4 days before he would have turned 84.
His character, Stephen Anders, is pointing a Polaroid land camera around. I had a Polaroid camera in the 1970s, or should I say, my mom had a Polaroid camera that I used to borrow. Ours was a cheap model. It got 8 pictures per pack. The professional model that Peter Graves is pointing around could take up to 32 shots on a pack of film. That's impressive for a Polaroid. There's an abrupt interruption of some loud, funky music. Anders hurries over to snap a picture of his daughter, Deborah Anders, who we had heard in the narration. She's played by Kathleen Quinlan.
Kathleen Quinlan was born on November 19, 1954 in Pasadena, California. Her father worked in the television industry as a sports director. She got her first acting break when George Lucas visited her high school to cast for his film American Graffiti. She appeared in Emergency in 1973. She appeared on 5 television series and 2 made-for-TV movies in 1974 alone, including Policewoman, Kojak, Ironside, and the NBC movie Where Have All the People Gone? Other notable roles were as Helen Foley in the It's a Good Life segment of Twilight Zone the movie, and as Marilyn Lovell in the 1995 film Apollo 13, for which she was nominated for Best Supporting Actress. She has dozens more credits to her name in a career that has lasted half a century. She currently has a production in post.
The scene seems unimportant at first, but the camera and the radio do figure into the story later on. We follow Stephen Anders over to a tent where he asks, "Are you ready, Barbara?" Barbara Anders exits the tent. She is played by J.W. McIntosh.
J.W. McIntosh was born on March 30, 1937. She started acting on screen in the early 70s, first appearing in the 1971 film Wild Rovers. The following year she made her debut on television playing the part of Sally in an episode of Bonanza. She played small parts in Search, Gunsmoke, The Streets of San Francisco, Cannon, and Lassie. Mannix, 8 is Enough, the Logan's Run television series, The Waltons, Dallas, Days of Our Lives, and Simon and Simon. She was in a dozen made-for-TV movies including Where Have All the People Gone? Her last credited on-screen appearance was as Justice O'Connor in an episode of Picket Fences in 1994. She is reported to be living in Paris, France.
The couple walks back across the clearing as she explains why she has to head back to L.A. We hear a gunshot.
Is that Tom?
Yeah, he's around here somewhere.
A man dressed in jeans and a jean jacket is carrying a gas can around what I at first thought was a pickup truck, but it's actually a Chevy Blazer with its top off. Now there's something I haven't seen in ages.
Well, looks like we got rabbit stew for dinner again tonight.
He's Noble Willingham as Jim Clancy.
Noble Willingham was born in Texas on August 31, 1931. He was an economics teacher in Texas with a lifelong dream of becoming an actor. He auditioned for a part in the 1971 film The Last Picture Show when it was filming in the Lone Star State. He got that role, and it led to another role in the 1973 production of Paper Moon. He has appeared in more than 30 films as well as numerous television appearances. You may have seen him on Bonanza, Macmillan and Wife, Gunsmoke, Apple's Way, and The Mary Tyler Moore Show. He was Uncle Barney in Big Bad Mama and he appeared in Cannon, The Waltons, The Rockford Files, Lou Grant, Alice, How the West Was Won, Heart to Heart, WKRP in Cincinnati, Chips, The Dukes of Hazzard, Benson, Airwolf, Highway to Heaven, and The A-Team. He was a general in Good Morning Vietnam, and he appeared on L.A. Law, Star Trek The Next Generation, The Young Riders and Matlock. He played Clay Stone in both City Slickers films, appeared in episodes of Quantum Leap, Murder, She Wrote, Home Improvement, Tales of the Crypt, as well as in the movies Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, and Guarding Tess. He was a regular on Walker, Texas Ranger. Noble Willingham was unsuccessful in his run for the U.S. House of Representatives in the year 2000. His last film appearance was in the 2003 movie Blind Horizon starring Val Kilmer. Noble Willingham died on January 17, 2004.
And that's Doug Chapin as his son Tom Clancy, and he's carrying the rabbit he just shot.
Doug Chapin was born on April 18, 1950 in New York City. He is an actor turned producer who appeared in several made-for-TV movies and a dozen TV shows, including Mannix, The Streets of San Francisco, Cannon, and Policewoman. In the late 70s he shifted his attention to producing such films as When a Stranger Calls and its television follow-up, When a Stranger Calls Back, and the 1993 biopic What's Love Got to Do with It.
She says goodbye to her daughter Deborah, and her son David comes walking out of the cave he was exploring just in time to see her off.
George O'Hanlon Jr. was born on December 7, 1953 in Los Angeles. He comes from a family of actors. His grandparents were a vaudeville team. His mother had been an actress before marriage and his father was a film actor, as well as the voice of George Jetson. Jr. appeared in plays during high school. George started acting professionally in 1973. Since then he has appeared in dozens of roles on television as well as the big screen. He has appeared on MASH, Chips, Quincy M.E., Magnum P.I., and the television miniseries War and Remembrance. He played Sergeant Rafferty on 13 episodes of Jake and the Fat Man, a transporter chief on an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation. as well as appearances on Fantasy Island, Baywatch, and Lost to name a few.
Tom Clancy drives her away in the Blazer, promising to be back next week. Well, now that we've got the characters introduced, let's get into the meat of the story. The Anders family is exploring inside the cave while Jim Clancy is outside tending to the rabbit stew. He seems to sense something. We get a look around at the trees, and then there's an intense solar flare. Jim shields his eyes from the intense brightness, and then within seconds there's an earthquake.
Earthquake, come on!
The Anders family makes it out of the cave without injury. David remarks,
It must have hit 6 on the Richter.
so the National Earthquake Information Center, with its seismic sensors and all the other instruments, has certainly got nothing on David Anders.
Everybody all right?
Clancy meets the Anders at the cave entrance and says,
Air Force must have tested the biggest bum they ever had.
Bomb? You sure that wasn't an earthquake?
No. That weren't no natural earthquake.
David tries the radio, but all he can get is static.
You've been on that thing 3 hours. You gonna run them batteries down?
I still can't get anything.
Oh, great. Now I can't even listen to my music.
Deborah is peeved that she can't listen to her music, but David is worried that there's been some sort of a nuclear accident. Clancy collapses by the campfire.
Clancy? Hey, what is it? I feel weak.
He says he's got no energy. When the sun goes down and David isn't able to reach Mrs. Clancy on the two-way radio, Steve tells Deborah to try to keep Clancy as comfortable as possible. He asks David if Clancy could be suffering from some radiation poison. David said it would have to have been a massive dose, at least 200 Watkins. Steve tells David to start a mayday on the radio, and if they can't reach anyone by morning, they'll make some kind of a litter and carry Clancy out. David says it's a 2-day hike. In the morning, they start to break camp, and David notices the camera. He decides to test a theory.
Leave it, we don't need that.
If there's a large dose of radiation, we'll show in the film.
He snaps a picture.
The picture will come out with white spots on it.
If there was a massive dose of radiation, he says the picture will come out with spots on it. And of course it does. They start to carry Clancy down the mountain on their makeshift litter.
It's gonna be dark soon. We'd better find a spot to spend the night.
When they start to discuss finding a place to spend the night, Clancy gets really sick.
Put him down. Go on.
Around the campfire that night, they discuss what to do with Clancy's body. Deborah says they can't leave him, but David says they need to get back to civilization as fast as they can.
Well, what do you know? 1 year of college physics and you think you know everything.
In the morning, they prepare a makeshift grave. But when they go to get Clancy's body, there's nothing left but a fine white powder.
Radiation do that?
I don't know.
They decide to get out of there
Come on,
fast.
let's get out of here.
Deborah gives another narrative voiceover.
As horrible as Clancy's death was, they still believed it was some kind of freak accident.
They thought that once they got back to civilization, all of their fears and questions would be answered. When we come back from a station break, we see a sign blowing in the wind. It says Rainbow, California, population 250. It looks totally abandoned, with car doors left open as if their occupants had left in a hurry. Steve enters a building and he gets attacked by a black cat. Now that's ominous.
Where's everybody? Where are all the people?
David announces that the power is out. He tries a payphone. It's dead too.
David.
But he keeps trying out of desperation. Steve and Deborah look inside a car and they see a set of clothing with white powder in it.
It was a nuclear war.
Deb, come on.
It was a nuclear war! And they're all dead! Everybody's dead! No! 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 No!
David.
No! No! Leave me alone!
David runs off to the Clancy house. Steve and Deborah follow him. They find Tom's blazer.
Her stuff isn't here. She must have got to the airfield and got out of here before this thing happened.
While Steve goes into the house to look for Tom and Mrs. Clancy, David tries to start the blazer. The Clancys are dead. So is their telephone. David uses Clancy's Geiger counter to check for radiation, and finding none, they raid the pantry. They're eating like ravenous maniacs, and Deborah says,
Hey, we're gonna get sick.
I think their laughing reaction to that statement is way overdone, and it caught me off guard from the very beginning. Since the blazer's battery is dead and its generator is fried, David replaces the battery with a good one. He says they won't get very far without a working generator, so they'll need to find some spare batteries. Steve asks David what could cause such a thing. David says he doesn't know, but I think it's obvious that he's holding something back. They leave Rainbow in the blazer. They stop at a gas station. Steve finds some batteries. David checks the oil, and he tells his dad to get some of that too. Deborah wanders off and finds a doll on the ground. She picks it up and hugs it, crying. At the next gas station, they decide to siphon gas from the abandoned cars nearby, since there's no electricity to operate the gas pumps. When David starts to siphon gas from a VW minibus, a dazed woman appears in the window of the vehicle. He runs off, yelling for his dad.
Dad, look.
Steve opens the door to the minibus and says hello.
Hello?
The woman appears to be in a trance. They help the woman out of the vehicle. Deborah asks her name.
What's your name?
The woman notices the baby doll and reaches for it. She pulls it from Deborah, and she clutches it to her bosom.
What do we do with her?
We clean her up.
The woman is played by Verna Bloom.
Verna Bloom was born on August 7, 1938. She began acting in television series in 1967 with more than 30 credits to her name. She is best known for National Lampoon's Animal House, High Plains Drifter and The Last Temptation of Christ. Vera Bloom died on January 9, 2019.
Steve concludes that whatever has happened, there are survivors. Deborah spoon-feeds the woman, and since she won't say anything, Deborah decides that she looks like an Ann, so that's what she'll call her.
Come on, Ann.
Ann, is that her name?
We don't know, but she looks like an Ann.
Dog!
Steve tells his daughter to back away very slowly. He moves toward the repair bay and grabs a long box-end wrench. Just in time, the dog lunges at him. He wrestles with the dog and he hits it with the wrench, and it squeals and runs off.
Get in the car!
We begin the next act with another voiceover from Deborah,
We drove all day without seeing anyone.
and we see the blazer driving down the middle of the road. In that voiceover, we discover that Ann's name is really Jenny.
Finding Jenny meant that there were survivors.
So I'm conditioned to driving on the right side of the yellow line, and I don't know if I'd be able to drive down the middle of the road like that, even if I was the only one alive. Anyway, they pass a sign that says it's 72 miles to Bakersfield. They soon come upon a man who's standing beside an overheating vehicle. The man is played by Dan Barrows.
Dan Barrows was born in Ohio on June 8, 1934. He spent his early years as a member of the improv group The Committee. His first Hollywood gig was as a student in the 1971 film Billy Jack. Since then he has built up nearly 100 credits to his name, usually going by the pseudonym Beans Morocco. He will be appearing in Killing Cookie, which is in post-production and due out in 2023.
When they stop to lend a hand and maybe find out what's happened, the man pulls a gun on them. He makes them get out of their blazer. He intends to leave them stranded with no food or water.
I'm sorry.
Well, you can't just leave us out here without food or water.
Better that than dead.
What's ahead of us?
Nothing.
They start walking. That night, by a campfire, the sound of a coyote howling scares Jenny, who they're still calling Ann. They come to a farmhouse, and while the women find something to eat, Steve and David look for transportation.
No phone, no electricity. Bedrooms are empty.
Dad, take her inside, see if you can find something to eat. Let's see if they've got a car, David.
They discover there's no car, so they assume whoever lived here had taken off. The men find two bodies out in the open. We see the next scene play out over the barrel of a shotgun.
They didn't disintegrate.
They've been shot. David? Oh, Lord, but somebody's pointing a gun at us from the barn. No, don't turn. I want you to get back to the house.
Dad.
Just do it.
Steve sends David back toward the house while he continues exploring, trying to ignore the gun. Steve hears Deborah calling. She and Jenny are coming to the barn. He tells them to go back. David takes the opportunity to sneak around behind the gunman, and he lunges for the gun.
David! You little idiot.
What's happening? Is David all right?
It was just a kid. The dead people were his parents. Jenny talks to the boy, Michael, calling him Billy.
She thinks my name is Billy.
I guess that's okay because Deborah's still calling Jenny Ann.
Is it all right if she calls you that just for a little while? My name is Michael.
The part of Michael was played by Michael James Wickstead.
Child actor Michael James Wickstead was born on September 8, 1961 in Santa Monica, California to actors James Wickstead and Constance Cavendish. He performed in more than 30 productions between 1968 and 1977. Some popular shows he appeared in were Adam 12, Ironside, It Takes a Thief, Gunsmoke, and the Woody Allen film Take the Money and Run. Family Affair, Land of the Giants, Daniel Boone, 4 episodes of Lassie, and 2 episodes of The Magical World of Disney. Bonanza, Mod Squad, Emergency, The Rookies, Love Story. The Smith Family Robinson, Little House on the Prairie and 39 episodes of The Smith Family. His final film was Islands in the Stream in 1977.
Hey, Michael, check out this harness, will you? See if I did it right?
Steve has hooked 2 horses to a wagon. He has Michael check the harnesses to make sure they're okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
Hey, good. Now, listen, I want to ask you some questions. About what happened.
Me and my dad. We were baling hay.
Was there a bright flash of light?
Like a bomb?
No, it was the sun. It just got brighter and brighter for a couple of seconds. Then there was the earthquake. We tried listening to the radio, and that didn't work. We tried the telephone and the lights, and that didn't work either.
This really surprises Steve because he thought they weren't affected because they'd been inside the cave, but now it was obvious that there was some other explanation. David hypothesizes that it was probably a tremendous solar flare, sending out enough gamma rays to knock out the power sources. He has no theories about what killed the people, since it had nothing to do with whether or not they were sheltered. In the next scene, we see the ragtag group in their horse-drawn wagon approaching a truck that is pulled to the side of the road.
The keys are in the ignition. Of course the keys in the ignition. I am so stupid!
What do you mean?
An electrical overload can only knock out a generator that's working. The ignition has to be on, the engine has to be running. Any other car should be fine.
They drive the team into a small town with a grocery store.
Well, David and I looked for a car. You can go in the market and get some more food and water, huh?
When they see a man exit the store, the man runs for his car, but he stops because Steve fires a round from the shotgun.
Back away from the car.
The man surrenders. His name is Jack McFadden, played by Ken Sansom.
Ken Sansom was born Frank Kenneth Sansom on April 2, 1927 in Salt Lake City. He graduated college in 1949 with a degree in broadcasting. He served with the U.S. Navy during the Korean War and he was part of the USO. After the war, he got his start in radio, hosting his own show on Salt Lake's KSLAM. He did some voice acting, and that led to appearances in TV shows. He made the circuit of the Brady Bunch, Mayberry RFD, Room 222, Julia, and The Odd Couple. Then he appeared in a few made-for-TV movies, In Broad Daylight and Two on a Bench. He played small parts in All in the Family, Columbo, Toma, and Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice. He appeared in films too, The Long Goodbye, The Sting, Herbie Rides Again, Airport 1975, and Funny Lady. He continued working bit parts, mostly on television, until he landed some recurring roles. He did 50 episodes of Days of Our Lives. But he is better known as the voice of the rabbit in the Winnie the Pooh films, videos, and TV shows, beginning with The New Adventures of Winnie the Pooh in 1988. It's a role he played until his death at the age of 85 on October 8, 2012.
McFadden warns them not to go to L.A. He got his wife and the kids out of the city. The city is a nightmare.
I've seen things. My kids have seen things.
What happened? I mean, is it all over the world?
I don't know. The radio went off. There was no communication. I heard something about an epidemic of some kind. I don't know.
Are there many survivors?
You can drive for miles, even in the city, and not find anybody.
Where's your family?
Why?
No, I mean, are they safe?
We found a ranch outside of town.
He suggests that they check behind the counter at the market. Some of the employees leave their keys there. It's easier than crossing wires, he says.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Steve tells David to hitch the horses as the rest of them enter the dark grocery store. Deborah spots a whiteboard with survivors' messages scrawled on it. Michael runs around the store grabbing food items. He looks around as if he feels he's shoplifting. He snatches up some cookies from an end cap and a bunch of carrots from the produce section. Then he runs outside to feed the carrots to the horses. Meanwhile, Steve and David have matched a set of keys to a car with a full tank of gas. David says they should be home in a few hours. All they have to do now is pack up the car and get going. A mangy dog approaches Michael and starts growling. Another dog blocks Michael's path back to the grocery store.
Where's Michael?
I don't know.
Jenny looks outside and sees the dogs surrounding Michael.
David!
They subdue Jenny, and Deborah takes her back inside.
Where's the shotgun?
In the wagon. Move very carefully.
I hope he means the station wagon, because there's no way David's getting back to the horse-drawn wagon. They create a distraction by having Michael release the horses. Then they all run into the store, and Jenny blurts out,
They did it. They killed them. The dogs. The dogs killed my children.
she had left her children alone in the car with the windows down, and dogs had killed them. No wonder she was so traumatized. We enter L.A. to another voiceover from Deborah.
Los Angeles. Empty and lonely.
As they drive through the deserted streets of Los Angeles, we hear ghostly sounds of car horns and traffic echoing. They pass a park and we hear children playing, but we see children's clothing with white powder. The school playground is empty. They turn onto Malibu Canyon Road. They're almost home. Steve asks Jenny where she's from. Denver, she says. She tried to get the kids back to Denver, but she ran out of gas. She was looking for another car to use when the dogs attacked her children. They now come to a roadblock. A school bus is across the road.
Dad!
Oh, look, cover your eyes. Cover.
There's another solar flare. And another quake. But they feel fairly certain that they're safe from its effects.
I guess if we live through the first one, we'll be all right, huh?
Get the shotgun and some water. Let's get home as quick as we can.
They hike the rest of the way home, expecting Barbara to still be alive.
David, wait for us.
You're supposed to be alive. Whoa!
She left a note. There's a virus, and only a certain few people have the gene that gives them immunity. Jenny tries to comfort Steve, but he's given up.
What are we going to do?
There's nothing left, he says. She feels there's no reason to go on as well. She stops to cover Michael, and then she heads to the ocean to drown herself. Michael wakes up in time to realize what she's doing, and he alerts the family. They manage to pull her to shore. They need each other. They need to survive together.
We knew now we were able to survive. But even more importantly, we wanted to survive.
In the final voiceover from Deborah, she says they moved to Northern California, where there was fresh water and land for farming. The new world was waiting for them to begin again. I have to say now that I was thinking about this movie quite often during the times I was traveling on empty highways on my way to my essential job while everyone else was under lockdown during the early days of COVID. And it was a scary feeling indeed. Well, that's it for this episode of Joe's Reminiscence. Join me next time for another Search episode.